Hey guys, and welcome back to We've Got Issues. It is our regular conversation amongst a group of friends who've known one another for 40 years. We asked ourselves, do the rest of the world see what happens in the world the way we do? So we figured we'd put it out for your consumption. So I'm here with my 40 plus years in the game friends, Ron Evans.
Hey,
That's it. That's him. And then we've got Darren Gray as always.
What up, though?
Yes, yes, yes. So, and again, my name is Nick Cates, and we all met 40 years ago in college at USC. And so we talk about everything from politics to religion to finances to whatever the topic is that's on our text thread. And today, our good friend Ron is going to bring to for your consumption what's been on his mind based on what's gone through our text thread today. So, Ron, take it away.
man. So I'm gonna start off by throwing a Molotov cocktail in the room and watch it burn, because I'm going to offend all of our friends almost, except for a couple that live outside of LA. So my word or phrase of the week is Stockholm Syndrome, the Los Angeles edition. And what I mean by that is LA is a great place to be from. I'm so proud to be born, raised, educated in Los Angeles, have all of our friends after college from Los Angeles. But that romance of how we used to live is not the current reality of living in Los Angeles. I could cite a couple things. Someone really smart that's on this podcast told me once, Ron, the average home price in Los Angeles, the median, I believe it was the median home price is over $1 million, which prices out a whole lot of 20 and 30 somethings that are trying to get a leg up. I'm just going to use two numbers, 10 and 405. And for those of you outside of LA that don't know what I'm talking about, those are the two main arteries in Los Angeles. One goes east-west, the 10, the 405 goes north-south, and 24/7, there's nothing but traffic. I don't know where people are going. The city is overcrowded. It is a great place to visit if you can go stay on the west side and live, be in a hotel where you want, but that's not the reality of the everyday Angelinos. High taxes, high insurance. I think State Farm's just found out this week that they've been greenlit to raise homeowner insurance by 22%. Earthquake insurance, car insurance, and you put this all together, and that's the main meal. And now I'm going to serve you dessert. The dessert on this all you can eat feast is when you look at going in, and I saw this, guys, and you guys are probably anesthetized to it. I went into the CVS by the airport on Sepulveda, and I went in there, and everything is behind plastic glass where you got to ask for somebody to get you deodorant, to get you toothpaste. You are living like you are not trusted. We've allowed people in that city, I think in the state, to be able to take plastic bags and steal stuff without retribution. Security guards and employees are afraid to stop people because they'll get fired. It is such a difficult place to live, and there are so many places outside of Los Angeles. The DC area is one, Chicago is one, Denver's one, Dallas is another one. There's so many places where your money goes farther. You have a higher quality of living, and you also have access to other places. Like if you're on the East Coast, you have access to Europe. You have access to seeing cultures and people that you never have a chance to see when you're in Los Angeles, because going from Los Angeles to Europe is like me being in Virginia, going from Virginia to Hawaii or Tokyo. It's just too far to be practical some days, or most days when you think about it. So that's my case for I love y'all, but I really wish you guys would live outside of Los Angeles at some point in your lives?
Well, I'm gonna fire at him first, Dan.
Go ahead. Take aim.
You're a transplant, and I know you care about LA, but you may not care about LA the way that I do, right? As being someone who's born and raised here. But Ron, in seriousness, the conflicts of interest to living in LA or California are apparent. Like I think your points are well founded. My only real pushback is that it actually refers back to Darin's point last week. There's the wind and there's the water, right? The wind is a distraction. The water is the reality. So the wind is that, sure, there are things like the high taxes and the putting stuff behind glass and the traffic and the high cost of housing and all that kind of stuff. All those things, to my mind, are things that are part of a continuum. They're going to get addressed. They're not baked in. They don't have to be that way, and they weren't that way at one point. And there's going to be a point in the future where they also won't be that way. It won't be that way because of maybe migration, people leaving, administrations changing, a different governor, a different mayor. Like things are going to, because nobody wants to be left behind. No state, no city, no whatever wants to be left behind. And I think that in the climate, if there's one thing about the climate that we're seeing in the country, that, sometimes when you've had a long run of success, you may get a little bit complacent about some of the things that you really do need to change. I think we're seeing that with our government. I don't think what's happening in the national government is ever going to go back to the way it was before, because even if a Democrat gets elected, I think the idea that we need to really reimagine how this country operates, not the way that the Trump administration reimagines it, but to reimagine it, because in some ways it didn't work as well as it should. Well, I think in Los Angeles and in California, I think those things are going to go that way. So I'm not ready to run from California or from LA, because I do believe that despite its deficiencies, I haven't seen a place on earth where it's paradise, where you get all the benefits and none of the liabilities. You're going to give up something to get something. Everything is a trade-off, right? And it could be that the trade-offs right now and for the foreseeable future in California are too high. But it could be that those things are going to self-correct, as most things tend to. So I'll leave it there and see what Darin has to say about it.
Well, I'm going to reframe for just a minute, because we talked about reframing. Okay. So back in September, October, and November, when I raised these very issues about Democrats, I said, if you are in Los Angeles, your city council person, your mayor, your state representative, your state senator, your U.S. senator, your congressional rep, and your governor, and your district attorney, and your state attorney general, and your lieutenant governor are all Democrats. And so when people were advocating for Vice President Harris and the Democrats, I was saying that for people who are experiencing life the way Ron described it, add in homelessness, add in schools. Mm-hmm. The Democrat Party is not something that people are going to be excited about. They may or may not vote for President Trump, but they will stay home, because you're saying that this is the direction that we want the country to go into. And in our text chain, I took a lot of fire for that, because people were saying, well, it's going to be worse under this. Crime is down. People were saying that. And my response was, in your neighborhood, yeah, because you all live on the west side or you live in the hills. But for folks in the urban parts of the city, they don't experience life like you used to. Your kids go to private schools. Their kids have to go to the local schools that you drive by on the way to private school. Like, homelessness is down because your social capital is high enough to get your city council people to do something about it, whereas in the inner cities, it's not. So that's just a reframing of, I had this exact same conversation about the experience that Ron had on a visit to Los Angeles.
All I'm going to say is
Let me finish. I'll get to your point in a minute. I just wanted to reframe. I just wanted to acknowledge that I was reframing it.
So his acknowledgement is like, I told you so.
Exactly. There you go.
That's all he's saying. Told you so.
That's what I'm saying. Now, getting back to the issues of
so all that preamble was "I told you so."
I told you so. Yes. Getting back to the preamble of Los Angeles, wow. The struggle for a lot of us who are here, in addition to family and everything, is our expenses are also baked in, right? So if I move somewhere, I need to move somewhere where my income is going to stay the same, because there are some expenses that are baked in. Like you may change the cost of housing, but your unsecured debt, that your all of the things that make up your budget, a lot of those things are fixed costs. You will decrease some of that, but when you add in the additional cost of moving and getting set up, unless you have a company that's covering all that cost, you're sort of trapped in this state right now. Like, in order for me to move, assuming that I've got grandkids, so I can't move for another 15 years, but assuming that I wanted to move, I'd have to, during my working years, I'd have to find a job that pays what I get paid now in a state where you have to pay more because of the cost of living, because there are just some baked in expenses that go with me. My plan for retirement depends on me making a certain dollar amount contribution into my retirement fund. And so there are things that I think that a lot of us are sort of trapped into. Add to that the government layoffs and the big tech layoffs. It's not that easy for folks living here in California to make that transition. Like, if you work for Tesla and they're moving, you get to move back. And then finishing up, when I worked for Hughes Aircraft back in the 80s, General Motors owned Hughes Aircraft, and what they allowed you to do is you could transfer back through GM back to Michigan and keep your salary the same. So that would have worked back then. But at the time, I wasn't ready to leave the Sunshine State.
Man, so look, there's a cost of living calculator that shows what it costs to live in various other cities. I tried to get over on my boss when I left Los Angeles. I said, dude, I can't move to Ohio and you pay me the same salary. And he's like, Ron, shut up. It costs 30% less to live in Ohio than it does in LA. Who are you talking to? The fixed expenses absolutely go down. The car insurance absolutely goes down. You said that unsecured debt doesn't go down. That I don't understand, because the only unsecured debt that I could think of is credit card debt. So what are you saying? So are you saying your spending habits can't be reined in to where you can enjoy a benefit?
No, not even saying that. I'm saying that anything that, like, if you are determined to pay off debt at a certain rate, you still have to, if you don't change that, I mean, if you lower your spending, then you're going to extend your debt out. So it doesn't matter what your spending is. If, let's say, you have a certain amount of unsecured debt that you have a plan to pay it off in 2 years, right? Well, that's a cost that's not going to change in the next 2 years, right? I still have to pay that if I want to pay it off. Now, if I extend it, then there's a cost and an opportunity cost. Okay, so I'm going to be making 20% less, and all these other things are going to go down. So that's what I'm saying is, like, if you have a plan in place and your financial plan is based on your current income, yeah, you can say that there are going to be decreases in insurance, and not right away, because there's not like a buffer zone. You still have to increase your cost to move, and it's going to take time to catch up.
But Darren, I think you're looking at this in an interesting way. If you move to Podunk, Iowa, okay, and let's just say that the cost of living is 25% lower in Podunk, your cost of living goes down if your salary goes down 25% as well, just to keep the math simple. You've effectively, it's a lateral move in terms of quality of life. You have not increased your debt, and you can still pay the same percentage on paying down your unsecured debt as you did when you were in Los Angeles. Now, the arbitrage is when you go to a lower cost of living place. Let's say it's 25% lower. and then you take a salary cut, but let's say it's only 15% lower. Now you've got a 10% raise.
Yeah, but your contributions also to your retirement change, right? Like if I take a 15%, if I take 15% less and expense, there's a zero sum game there, but now I'm contributing less to my retirement, right? Because I'm earning 15%.
You may not
exactly.
No, what I'm saying is like if I get a 25% lower cost of living, and let's say I get a 15% less raise, the math doesn't necessarily equal out to my pre-tax contribution.
Sure it does. Well, it works out is if you have the ability to change the percentage that you can contribute to your 403B or your 401k, you can just increase the percentage.
But if the percentage is maxed out, right? If I'm contributing the maximum amount and my employer is matching the maximum amount, if I have lower money, I can't increase that contribution, right? I know for the business school, math is really, really hard. So I'll make it simple. Let's say I'm contributing $1, and that's the maximum amount based on my salary.
Yep.
And I move, and let's say now I am contributing 85 cents because that's the maximum of my salary. I have now lost 15% plus my employer. How is that not math? How is that?
Okay.
Because it's a percentage, right? You get a max of the percentage of your income that you can contribute, not a dollar value, right?
Again, let me explain to you
with the cost of living. If you stay in that place when you retire, you won't need as much when you.
Yeah, like if I wait till I retire, it's a different role, but my contributions will decrease.
All right, so let me explain some things you didn't learn in electromagnetics that you didn't learn in business school. Okay, so let's say you're contributing that $1. First of all, the employer is not going to give you 100% match on the entire percentage that you contribute.
My current employer does, so it's one of those unique things of my current employer.
If you contribute up to the max of $25,000,
they match it.
Let me just get that out so make sure you hear what my question is.
Okay.
If you contribute $25,000, which is the 401k max, I think.
Well, it's not 25,000. It's a percentage of your income, right?
Yes. Okay, but the employer match in almost every place is up to about 6% of your. So for the first 6% that you put in, they'll match it. Anything above 6%, they don't match. It's on you.
And I think furthermore, what the max is, so you can contribute up to 15% of your income, up to a certain amount that you've contributed, which might be $25,000. So once you get to 25,000, contributing 15% of your income per paycheck, I think you're topped off. You're topped out.
Yeah, Nick, why don't you and I continue the conversation while Darren logs into his benefits at work
right now? At it right now, and my employer does 5%.
I'm sorry, I'm a little hard of hearing. Can you say that one more time?
Right here, I told you so coming. He's winding up.
Wait, let me get him.
And then an additional 5%. So I get matched at 10%.
10%. That's
still really good.
That's generous.
So I get a 10%. So if I would have to find an employer that does that, and I'm still, if whatever the max percentage is on my current income, if my current income decreases, would you agree that I'm going to be contributing less to my retirement?
No.
If you can contribute up to $25,000, let's say, you can still contribute up to $25,000.
Yeah.
If that's the max.
What's the max percentage of contribution for 403? Because I work, it's simply the same as it's the. Let's see.
We're gonna lose whatever little audience we have.
This is definitely going to be edited out, right?
Darren's 403B statement.
While he's checking that out, because I think to your point, Ron. So there's a different issue at play here. People are at different stages of life. Like Darren is bringing up to you that he's a 60-ish year old man with 60-ish year old man kind of concerns about what living in California, what living in Los Angeles means. It's not just about, you know, the economics of it. There are family, there are, you know, other characteristics to be considered as well. I think the 27-year-old, you know, Darin might be more amenable to your conversation because he's got so much more life ahead of him, right? That he could, you know, make different kinds of choices. And I think for a lot of younger people who live in Los Angeles or who've come to Los Angeles or California, I think that arbitrage, as you mentioned, is a legitimate one. I think the cost benefit of living in LA is certainly up for debate, and it's not going to be for everyone. And unfortunately, people like Darin and myself and maybe other friends of ours who basically have planted now roots, they've got, whether it's real estate holdings or they've got whatever it is, and their wealth and their security is tied into that, you know, living in LA may be worthwhile for the time being. There may become another time of life after you've, you know, in your prime earning years where that wealth could be better spent in different areas.
No, I think that's really well said because I think you guys know, I come out for at least 3 football games a year. And I have this bipolar relationship with that city. The plane lands in LAX. I'm so happy. I'm even happy when I leave the airport and I get on the shuttle to go to Avis. I'm even happy when I get in the car and I leave Avis and I turn on to Aviation or Airport Boulevard, whatever it is. And then I get on La Tierra or La Cienega and I deal with the mass of people. And I'm like, where the heck are all these people going at this time of day, no matter what time of day it is? And it's so hard. And it's a real issue to me. And it's the reason I brought it up this week, because I talked to my wife. It used to be at least once a month for at least, 15 years. Are we going to move back? All our friends are there. Family's there. Our football team is there. You know, everything is there. And we always talk about it. And it always comes back to, one, where would we live? And are we willing to have a reduction in our quality of life to go back to LA? And so it's a very real topic for us. And the answer keeps coming back. It's too expensive to live there anymore. And maybe it's because we jumped off the train.
Yeah.
You guys are still on the train, especially you, Nick, with what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, you're in the executive dining car with the cigar and the cognac. But
and a broom.
And a broom.
And a mop.
Well, truth be told, Ron, I actually agree with you because in 2018, 2019, my wife and I had planned to move back to Detroit, well, outside of Detroit. We had picked out the house. I had a job that I was very comfortable that I was going to get, and it was actually going to be an increase in both stature and in salary. So we were, you know, my wife is a sun bunny. You know, she's born and raised out here, and convincing her, she's been back to Michigan a couple of times in the snow, and even convincing her. And then February of 2020, my son tells me that I'm about to be a grandpa of twins. And that shifted my entire, because I pushed back my exit plan at least by 18 years, because, you know, I have grandchildren here. So, you know, I don't disagree because I have a place to go back to. You know what I mean? I'm from Detroit and I still got family there. My mom is still in Detroit. So everything is still there for me. I still have an infrastructure. My old friends are there. So, you know, it wouldn't have been, it was the perfect opportunity for me to go. And there weren't any other opportunities. But I was ready to pop smoke, you know, and head out, because I was like, all right, I think I've done everything I wanted to do here. I think this new opportunity is going to be great for me. I had already planned it out, and I had been scoping it out for at least 5 years before that. So I had my exit strategy, and that's not to say that, you know, my grandkids, you know, when they go off to college or whatever they choose to do when they turn 18. You know, I'll be a lot older then, so you know, moving might, you know, that my arthritis might not work in that cold weather. So
right,
it may be Florida or Texas.
One other thing I'll mention, we said we mentioned this in our last episode. Our friend Leland is leaving. He's in our same age group, leaving LA to go move to the Atlanta area, outside of Atlanta, right? So he's going to be a test case for what it means to, and his reasons for leaving is, you know, it's too expensive. You know, the government, you know, is failing, you know, all the things that one might say for leaving LA. Well, he's going to get a chance to see what it's like living someplace else. And I've being in the real estate business, I know enough to know from people who have relocated either into California or out of California that there's always a trade-off. Nothing is exact. You get something and you give something. And so it's like me asking you at this stage of life, Ron, why don't you leave Arlington or Northern Virginia and go move someplace else? Like now you in your mind, because let's say, for example, the quality of life in Northern Virginia somehow has deteriorated.
Right.
Now you have to count up all the benefits that you have of living where you are, and say, well, is there a better place to go where the what I give up is worth what I get?
Yeah, I remember when we were at the Texas, we were in Texas for the Bama SC game, staying with one of our buddies who lives there, and he laughed because he said, "Your condo cost more than my 5-bedroom house," and you know, it was just hilarious. He was just like, "Yeah, you could sell your condo, buy my house, and have money left over for a nice car," and so. So I clearly see that, and you know, like when I look at, you know, just the value of our condo, you know, going up, doubling in the last 8 years, you know, I can definitely see that, you know, as you know, long term being able to not only have a higher quality of life, but also to be able to increase, you know, the inheritance of, you know, my progeny. So I see that, you know, as something.
I'm sorry, the inheritance of my progeny.
He did go to USC. He did take some classes. You know, I think.
Well, you know, we did have to take 1 or 2 literature classes from the School of Engineering.
Okay, go ahead, Shakespeare. Go ahead.
but I do see it. I do see the value of it. But again, I'm not from here.
Yeah.
You know, like when people say, you know, like I'm still a Detroiter. I'm not a Los Angelino. I'm a Michigander. I'm not a Californian. Even though I've been here longer than I lived in Detroit, I still consider myself a Detroiter, and I will always be a Detroiter. I root for the Lions above everybody, Michigan above everybody except for USC. So, you know, I'm still that, and I still have, you know, those Midwestern values and constraints on my behavior because of where I was. So I have no problem, you know, leaving, you know, the greater LA area. I love LA, but not enough. You know, if my grandchildren weren't here, I probably would have left.
I mean, I think, you know, we're in a situation where one daughter has graduated and she's in the workforce. The other is in the process of finishing up her college degree. And it does afford us an ability to say, okay, we really don't have any anchor to this area. So where do we want to live? And I think that's why this is a top of mind issue that we talk about all the time. We know that we don't want to stay here forever because we don't have friends and family here. We have an amazing quality of life. It's great for raising kids and having them go to public schools. Okay, check. But now we're in a stage of our life where we want to travel and we want to see places. And I would love for us to be able to say, okay, we're going to anchor ourselves in Southern California and then spend time someplace else, you know, and be bi-coastal or whatever. But every time I look at LA, because I can tell you exactly where I want to live in Los Angeles. I mean, I know I jog by those townhomes along the Strand in Playa Vista, and it's just like right there. That's the one. Walk to the Strand. We could, you know, and then you go to Zillow, and you're like, oh my God, you got to take all your chips and just put them to the center of the table and say, I'm going to bet on real estate. Oh, and by the way, you better hope you don't have an earthquake or a fire, unfortunately, which is really,
not in Playa Vista. You're not worried about fire in Playa Vista.
No, you're not. Up the road in Palisades.
Right.
And it's just like the natural disasters. I mean, Nick, you tell me about this. You know it better than I do. How do you reconstruct your property when you have an earthquake or a fire?
I don't know that there's a good answer to that, because there's so many people that are underinsured, when it comes to that. And so you might get the replacement cost. So let's say your house is worth $2 million or whatever it is. But you're insured, your insurance might only give you whatever it costs to actually rebuild the house, which is far less than what the current value is. And if you owe, let's say it would be $800,000 to actually rebuild the house, right?
Okay.
But the house is worth $2 million, and you still owe $1.1 million, right?
Okay.
Or $1.2 million, but they're only going to give you $800,000. So your mortgage lender has something to say about that, right? Because you still have a mortgage that's above what you're insured for. So there could be some real issues around how to navigate that. I just had a situation where my car was hit. My car was hit while it was parked, and the insurance company says, here's what your car is worth now, which is less than what I still owe on the car, right? Now there's a gap, right? And so now I have to negotiate with the finance company about how to deal with that gap, right? Because I don't have gap insurance. There's a gap insurance you can get where, if you have a separation between what the insurance is going to pay and what you still owe, that gap insurance pays the difference, right? So there's not an easy solution. My point is, there's not an easy solution when it comes to insurance against disaster. Fire insurance, is probably more an important thing, because earthquake insurance is something a lot of people don't even have. You're not required to have earthquake insurance. You're required to have fire insurance on your property. Earthquake insurance is a huge expense. Like, most people can't even approach.
I've got earthquake insurance and fire insurance, and my association also has fire insurance, but not earthquake insurance.
Right.
So
it's very expensive.
It's expensive, and it's not as bad as I thought it would be. But it was something that my insurance broker said that you probably should think about that, because we're due.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So if like a lot of Angelinos, your house rich and cash poor, let's say your house is worth $1 million and you owe 500,000 on it. Okay. And then you have an earthquake with no earthquake insurance. Okay. How do you get shelter? How do you get a
HELOC, like Nick said, and as soon as the shaking stops, you take all your money out and you put it in your bank account. Like, while the earthquake, as soon as you get on the app and the app says there's an earthquake coming, you get on your other app while you're under the bed, and you're taking everything out of your HELOC and transfer it into your savings. That's how you do it.
There you go, Darren. That's how you. Wow. That's how you beat the man.
All right. Beat the man. All right. Well, that's one idea. All right. Appreciate it. But in this case, I mean, it's like if you've got a $1 million home with a $500,000 mortgage, and an earthquake destroys it, and you have no earthquake insurance, you're on the hook for the $500,000 mortgage. You're also on the hook for real estate taxes, because the dirt is worth something, but you don't have any place to live. So are they going to give you a construction loan if you work, and making
that's what FEMA is supposed to do. That's what they're trying to do. But it's what the disaster relief is supposed to be, to get no interest loans to build and all that stuff. So you're depending upon the government, which is broke, to find money to help support you, and depending on whether your governor is friends with the president or not, that depends on how much you get.
So to reiterate, high cost of living, traffic,
right,
overcrowding, and natural disasters. And it's like, you guys are rolling the dice every day, saying, all right, we didn't crap out today, let's roll it tomorrow.
Yep.
You know, you're
where
not
were you
wrong.
in October when I had that conversation? Just saying,
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Hang on a second, Nick. Give me a second. Darin, again, he's trying to get another double dip of "I told you so."
Right. I heard him. I heard him.
know,
But now that we're 35 minutes into this, we have to
Yeah.
we're gonna have to agree to partially agree, I think, with
Yeah.
you, Ryan.
Well, Darin, the problem is you cannot go into that text chain with the number of flaming liberals and say anything negative about a Democrat. Because there's people where it's like, well, what, again, like you said in a previous episode, well, what about Trump? It's like, no. I'm talking about, like you said, from top to bottom as Democrats. Are you okay with the homelessness? Are you okay with the smash and grabs? Are you okay with, with people, breaking into cars? Well, there's no counter argument to that other than, well, what about
Republicans? It goes back to what I said, I think, earlier. I think eyes are open. I think the points that are being made by you and people who are far more conservative than you, I think, are opening eyes. And when you've had Democrats in control of the state, since Arnold Schwarzenegger, pretty much, and they've had such a run of I guess relative success, or at least authority. Like now, people are saying, well, gee, things aren't so hot in San Francisco. Things aren't so hot in LA. Things are really kind of starting to deteriorate in San Diego. Like your big cities or whatever having trouble. Yeah. I do think there are going to be consequences to that. And I think some of those things are up for real reevaluation and correction, hopefully. Some of the expenses, because I don't care what you say about California, people are still moving to California. There's still an attraction to Los Angeles and California. There may be a net negative migration at this point, but it's not like migration has fallen off the table. And might I say, for someone like me, I welcome a huge net migration out.
As a real estate,
I hope that happens. I hope that happens.
Well, the problem also is the high net worth people are leaving, and that's the basis for our taxes. Because when all those if you break it down by economic, there is a larger migration of high net worth individuals leaving the state than coming in, which is why we keep having these massive budget deficits, $80 billion after a massive budget surpluses, because the net migration is, you're getting a lot of people coming here, but they're not necessarily the people that pay the majority of the taxes. And so that becomes a problem.
But if companies leave and if high net worth people leave, you get the attention of the governmental structure, and they will start making the kinds of changes that will be attractive to companies to either come back or make things easier by lowering, maybe there's property taxes, or by lowering state taxes, or by offering some kind of incentives. California is not going to sit by and let the state go into the toilet. Some things are going to happen in order to attract that kind of thing. And I hope that when it comes down to housing prices, if a lot of high net worth people are leaving and can't afford to buy those houses, that's what's going to allow people who were lower down on the economic ladder to afford some of those houses and get on that ladder.
I don't know, maybe a topic for another day, but the taxes don't seem to be going on here. We just passed a homeless tax that made permanent the sales tax that was supposed to sunset.
Wait. What's a homeless tax?
It's a tax. It's a sales tax, like 0.5%. So, like in LA County, your sales tax is like 10.5%, and so we just passed that, and now it's permanent. The Air Resources Board just passed a tax on gas that goes up by 50 cents, and so I think the ideologues are just going to keep soaking it to folks. And so maybe you're right; it'll eventually cause a revolt. But these people keep getting reelected. And but I know, topic for another time. A little bit of Ron.
So, Ron, you've definitely given us a lot. You put a lot of chum in the water this week, so you got to rise out of the sharks. But I'm sure now that you've done your job ably, you want to leave us with something to chew on in another way. So what is that?
As I started this thesis, I said it's a great place to be from. And I am so incredibly thankful for being in Los Angeles, going to school in Los Angeles, being on various people's floors after college where all we had was board games or cards or trash talk, or Denny's, where we could just go eat cheap and talk for hours and hours because that was free entertainment. It's a great place, and I'm really saddened when I go back and I see how hard it is to enjoy the city. And it could be a function of age. When you're 20 years old and you're broke, everything's great about LA. When you're older and you have a few dollars, it's like, well, why am I having to put up with blank? And that could be a function of privilege. I totally admit that. I just think you can have an easier life outside of LA.
Well, there's hundreds of millions of people who don't live in LA who would probably agree with you. So
yes.
I can't argue with that. So, but your parting shot, Ryan. What is your rave for this week as opposed to your rave?
So my rave for this week is there is a podcast, Sterling K. Brown, who many know from as Randall from This Is Us. He and his wife have a podcast called We Don't Always Agree. And it is a podcast where the two of them talk about very openly and honestly about marital issues, raising children, what it means to be Black in Hollywood, what it means to have a voice, and when do you speak up publicly when you see an injustice. And it is one of the most authentic conversations. It would feel like any of us were listening to another friend and their spouse talking. I mean, really, it is so transparent, and they're also funny because they talk smack, they joke with each other. You can see that there's a lot of love there, and it feels very familiar to how we talk with our spouses. And it's a wonderful podcast. Can't recommend it enough. It's about they did the first season, it's like 10 episodes. It's really good.
Great. Sterling K. Brown is in that new Paradise show, which I absolutely loved the first season.
I haven't seen that yet. I heard good things.
Yeah. Really good show.
Yeah, I watched it too. Yeah.
So that's my rant.
No, that's a good rave. It's always nice to hear real people talking about real issues.
Like us.
Who don't always agree. Go figure. Hey, maybe we're on to something here. And speaking of which, if you guys have thoughts about anything that we talked about on this podcast, particularly you Angelinos out there, or you expat Angelinos who have real thoughts about where the paradise is in this country, where you can live and work and play and educate your kids and enjoy a good quality of life. If that's here in LA, which I argue it still is, at least for those of us who have found it, who feel like we found it. But there's also other places to live. So love to hear your comments, your feedback. We have links in the show notes to what Ryan mentioned about Sterling K. Brown and his wife's podcast. And so we hope that you guys will enjoy that as well. So since we've gone a little bit longer today, guys, I guess we've gotten out of our system everything that we need for this week, huh?
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, then we will do it all again next time. So, guys, we appreciate you liking and following, and we will see you next time because we have issues, so you don't have to. We'll see you next time.